Hey y'all, welcome back to our very bookish channel. My name's Amanda, and in today's video we're going to be going over our most anticipated releases for March and April.
Hey guys, it's Jen. I am here, of course, to do our March and April most anticipated, and I have about the same as I usually do for these most anticipated. I really try my best to whittle down and take things off my list, and I do take things off my list, but it always ends up feeling like I have so many that I go through, and as much as I try to cut them off, I always end up around 25 titles for the 2 months that we're going to be talking about. For March and April, I did not see any that were in the sci-fi fantasy realm, and I know that Amanda's going to have that part of the world covered. That genre is going to be most of what she talks about, I'm sure. I have mostly fiction, horror, and thrillers, and I believe 1 or 2 romances are all stacked up on my March and April most anticipated. I know eventually this year I will have more sci-fi fantasy, but for now I am going to be taking a break from that realm. Though the first one that I talk about, I think technically it said it was in fiction, but it does sound like it has some sci-fi elements to it. It's called The Dream Hotel by Layla Lalami. March 4th is the release date. It's a riveting and utterly original novel about one woman's fight for freedom set in a near future where even dreams are under surveillance. It reminded me, there was a Tom Cruise action sci-fi thriller years ago where thoughts were being monitored, and I think they were trying to see who had notions of murdering someone, and you were able to get arrested by just thinking about it. I don't remember the name of the movie. If I'm able to find it, I can put it on the screen. But this one sounded interesting and different, so I didn't want to cut it from there. I try and have a pretty well-rounded mix of books so that I'm not reading just one type of book again and again and again. And this one sounded a little different other than that movie, so that's why I have it on my list.
All right, y'all. So starting off March strong, on March 4th, we have Finlay Donovan Digs Her Own Grave. I have read this book. I am putting out an ARC review for this book. By the time you see this video, my ARC review will probably be up for Finlay Donovan Digs Her Own Grave, and y'all know I am a fan of this series, so I think if you are also a fan of this series, you need to go get this book when it comes out. Also, if you are looking for cozy, humorous mystery, I highly recommend this series.
I do have a pile of ARCs here that are for March and April, and the first one that is at the top is for March 4th, and it's The Story That She Left Behind by Patty Callahan Henry. I did read a book by her, The Secret Book of Flora Lee, and I did really enjoy. This is more of like a historical type fiction, and the Secret Book of Flora Lee was definitely historical fiction. This one's in the 1920s. It's about a famous author who ends up disappearing. She leaves her husband and her young daughter the novel the world's been waiting for, but it's in a secret language. I do feel in the last maybe 6-ish months that I've had a couple books that had a disappearance of a famous author. So I feel like that's been a repeated theme. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to keep this one on the list, but I did enjoy the other one by this author. And I do have the ARC. I'm going to do my best to check this one out.
Also on March 4th, I have You Killed Me First by John Mars. Now, if you all watched the vlog we did, I think it was around October, no, I think it was summertime last year. I read a John Mars book and I didn't love it. I actually really didn't like it, most of it. Some of it I liked, but most of it I did not like. But I am not one to just write off an author completely based on one book that didn't agree with me. Okay, I am going to give him another chance. And this book sounds very interesting. It's about 3 suburban, I think they're housewives. I think one mentions it's like a retired actress or something. And then her assistant, and then this woman with this perfect family moves into their neighborhood, and these 3 kind of form a friendship. Kind of. They seem to get along and they pretend to like each other, but then they end up, something goes awry. And it says in the description in the very beginning of the book, one of the women wakes up and she is tied down in a pile of wood that they're setting on fire. So they're trying to kill her, and you don't know which one it is, and you don't know what's going to unfold. But this just sounds like a domestic thriller, rich people drama, and sometimes those books hit for me. Sometimes I'm in the mood for that kind of thing, and I think I want to give John Mars another try with this one. The next book up for March 4th, and my last book for March 4th, I think, is On the Wings of Blood by Briar Bolin. Briar Bolin. Anyways, this book I found on NetGalley, and I was approved to read it. I haven't read it yet. I don't think I'm going to get it read by March 4th, but I do want to give this book a try. I haven't heard of this author, but the premise of this book sounds like it's dark academia, which I like. It has dragons and it has vampires, and it mentions, you know, in some of the reviews that it's like Harry Potter mixed with Fourth Wing, mixed with Vampire Academy, and a little bit of The Legend of Arthur or something. I don't know, but it sounded interesting. I'm throwing it up here because I think some of our viewers might be interested in something like this, and I do really want to get to it. I just don't think I'm going to get to it before this book comes out, but it's something that I wanted to give a shot.
The next one's by an author I have not heard of. It's called You Deserve to Know by Aggie Blum Thompson. It comes out March 11th. And it's about neighbors Gwen, Amy, and Lisa, and they all confide in each other in this small cul-de-sac type neighborhood. And there's a support system that seems unbreakable. And every time you hear that or read that, you know that something is going to happen to break that. And Gwen's husband is found murdered after one of their weekly Friday dinners, and their peace is shattered. As the investigation digs deep into the murder, hidden jealousies and tensions emerge. That one sounded almost like the type of domestic thriller that Desperate Housewives. I used to watch that show, and I feel like there's a lot of domestic thriller authors out there that I enjoy, like Sherry LaPena. And this author is new. I figured I'd give it a try and see what it's like.
On March 11th, I have Blood and Empire by James Maxwell. For some reason, this book is appealing to me. It's making me feel like it might be another book that I find by an author I don't know, but that's just gonna wow me, kind of like Silver Blood Promise did. And this book is just, it's giving me those vibes. It says, Blood and Empire begins fast-selling author James Maxwell's long-awaited new epic fantasy series, The Gateway Saga, a gripping tale of ambition, sacrifice, and defiance in the face of destiny. And in this book, it says you're following Bethany, who dreams of becoming a diviner, which is a person who can kind of connect different worlds and broker peace between these two worlds or realms or territories or whatever they're calling them in this book. And the problem is that only like the high society people can qualify for these types of jobs. But she happens to find someone that is willing to provide her with some books and kind of teach her the way of doing this job. So her future is looking up. But with all of that, she gets a target on her back. Her father shows back up in her life, which we have no idea why he left, why he's come back. It just says her father shows up, and it creates a bunch of chaos for her. It just seems like, based on the description of this book, this could be one of those hidden gems for me that I'm just going to dig up and read and love. So it made my list.
The next one is a thriller. It's called Claire Darling, and it comes out March 11th by Callie Kazumi. Claire's excited to drop off a surprise workday lunch for her fiance Noah, It's their anniversary, but when the receptionist tells her that no one with Noah's name works there, Claire thinks there's some mistake. Noah isn't picking up her calls and her texts go unanswered. It turns out Noah has a separate life. A nightmarish journey of obsession begins, and she tries to figure out exactly what happened. That one sounded interesting. It sounded something along the lines of the thrillers that I like, where the main character thinks one reality exists and uncovers that there's something completely hidden behind it and trying to figure out exactly what the truth is. So that one comes out March 11th.
On March 18th, I have Sunrise of the Reaping. This is a novella for the Hunger Games trilogy, and it's the second novella that has come out by Suzanne Collins. Sorry, I didn't say the author, but I just assume like everyone knows Hunger Games. I have not read the first one yet. I know Jen also has the Songbird and Snakes one. We have not read that. I think we want to do a vlog of us reading both of these novellas in March. So stay tuned for that. I'm not going to say much more because I know Jen's also going to talk about the book, but it is on my most anticipated.
March 18th is a big release day for another sequel in the Hunger Games world, and it's called Sunrise on the Reaping. Me and Amanda do plan on doing a vlog for this. We didn't read the one that came out in 2020. I think it was in 2020. At least came out in a hardcover in 2020. I don't know when it released in paperback, but that one was a prequel. I did end up seeing the movie for that one, and it tells the story, the backstory of President Snow. So this one, Sunrise on the Reaping, tells the 50th Hunger Games, and it's about Hamish Abernathy. The description says that they take twice as many people for this Hunger Games since it's the 50th anniversary of the Hunger Games. And if you have either read the books or you have seen the movies, you know that Hamish obviously survives this games because he's in the future. And we just don't know the whole story of what happened. I don't even remember how much you find out in the books. I did read the original 3 books. I didn't read the prequel, the Ballad of, I'm forgetting the name. It's something like Ballad of Songbirds and something like that. I could put it on the screen. I thought the movies were done pretty well, but I felt the books, as usual, the books are always better, but there was a lot in the books I don't think they can necessarily put into the movies. This one seemed really interesting. Hamish was an interesting character, and I'm sure there are lots of things in his story that may connect to some of what we saw later in the Hunger Games. I'm very interested in reading it, so keep an eye out. We do plan on doing a vlog, and I believe we're going to do both the prequel and this one, though I'm much more interested in reading The Sunrise on the Reaping.
Also coming out March 18th is The Third Rule of Time Travel by Philip Foccassi. This book, I am so highly anticipated. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I'm not a time travel reader, okay? I don't really enjoy reading books about time traveling. I feel like, I mean, you all know how I feel about dual timelines in books. So time traveling just kind of, it's difficult for me to just wrap my head around sometimes, and I don't enjoy reading about it because it makes the book overly complicated and cumbersome for me to read. So, but I do feel like if it's done right, and there have been books that I have read with time traveling aspects in it that I have really liked. I can't tell you a book that comes to mind because it's a spoiler for that book, but if it's done right, I think I can do it. And I loved Boys in the Valley by Philip Foccassi. That was a horror book. This is a sci-fi book by him, but I am very interested. I just liked his writing. I liked how he provoked these images in my head through his book when I read Boys in the Valley. I've only read one book of his, but I enjoyed it so much. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm really interested to see how he does time travel. I will read you just a little bit of the blurb because it sounded interesting. Rule 1, you can only travel to a point within your lifetime. Rule 2, you can only travel for 90 seconds. Rule 3, you can only observe. The rules cannot be broken. So I feel like, obviously, one or all of those rules are going to be broken and there's going to be a mess. And I want to read this book. I think it's going to be good, and I think it's going to be different from his other book that I read. So I'm really curious to see how he handles writing a science fiction thriller.
On March 18th is a thriller called The Haunting of Room 904 by Erica T. Worth. Olivia is the character, and she has a gift to commune with the dead only after her sister dies unexpectedly. A few years later, she's the most in-demand paranormal investigator in Denver. She's good at her job, but the loss of her sister haunts her. She hears from a landmark hotel called the Brown Palace. The owner can't explain it, but every few years, a girl is found dead in room 904, no matter what room the girl checks into the night before. As Olivia looks into these deaths, past and present collide when Olivia is forced to confront a mysterious and dangerous cult, a vindictive journalist, a betrayal by her friends, and a shocking revelation about her sister's secret life. So that one sounded really interesting, and I almost feel like I meant to not say that whole description, because I feel like sometimes descriptions overtell what they're about, and I really do like going into most of my books with just a little bit of knowledge of what it's about and then diving into that story. But it sounds like there's a lot of elements going on in that story, but it does sound interesting. I have by the way, I have that as an electronic ARC, which is advanced reading copy. And I have several electronic ARCs that I'm very excited about. I don't think I'm going to get to every single one of them. I'm going to do my best to get to them, and we can do ARC reviews. So keep an eye out for those too.
Next on the list is The Land of Frost by Whitney Welsh Gibbs. This is coming out March 18th as well. And this book is another book I found on NetGalley. I haven't heard anyone talking about it, but the description has me very curious. This is the first book of a series, and in this book you're following a princess, and it's her wedding day, and she's super excited and happy and can't wait to just live the rest of her dazzling life. But there's a coup in her city, and her castle gets overthrown, her family is killed, she's stripped of her magic, and she ends up in a prison. I think it says in here she's rescued by the royal seamstress or something, but for the most part the enemy thinks that she's dead. The seamstress rescues her somehow, and they get found, and whoever finds her doesn't know who she is maybe, and sends her to a prison. So she's in this prison, and she is determined to get her life back, and she runs into a warrior that absolutely knows who she is and hates her while she's stuck in this prison. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of Fourth Wing, and now hear me out. I know you're probably tired of hearing about Fourth Wing, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of Fourth Wing when Violet gets into the college and she thinks that Xaden hates her and Xaden wants to kill her, so she's trying to watch her back. It's kind of giving me those vibes. So I thought that sounded very interesting. There's fairies in this book. Obviously there's magic. I said she's stripped of her magic, so there's magic, and then there's these warriors that she has to contend with. So we'll see. I think this could be a good book, and I want to give it a try and see where this book takes me.
The next one I was excited to get. I've been seeing this advertised because we frequent NetGalley and Edelweiss, which are two ways you can get electronic ARCs. And I also go on there. It's been the way I've been seeing what books are coming out as well. I usually dive into all kinds of different sites to see what books are coming out, but those have become my primary sources because publishers are advertising to get readers to read and talk about these books. And I saw this one and it just sounded really interesting. I don't know, something about the cover got me. It seems like a summer book, but it is coming out on March 25th. It takes place in 1992, and there was a murder in Italy where this family goes to vacation every year. It was ruled an accidental death, and she left behind her daughter, who is 3 years old, and her name is Helen. Jump to modern day, basically. Helen is still trying to figure out what happened to her mother all those years ago. And unfortunately, she knows it had to have been someone in her family that has murdered her, and she doesn't think it was an accident. She thinks her mom was murdered, but it's either a family friend or someone in her family. And she knows one of the people that were there at this exclusive hotel in Italy had to have been the one that murdered her mom. So it sounded really interesting. That's kind of, I feel like that's a basic thriller plot line. There's nothing special about it, but I don't know why something about it, this title and about this cover kept drawing me in. So I plan on reading this one in March.
On to March 25th, and March 25th is a book that Jen and I both got ARCs for, and we are going to vlog it in March, and that is This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. Now, our very first reading vlog was Ashley Winstead novel, and I liked it. Jen thought it was just okay. I really liked it, and I'm really excited to read this book. So that's all I'm going to say about it. Just stay tuned for the vlog coming out. We are doing that to celebrate another year on YouTube, and it's just so funny. This book is coming out the month that we did our first vlog, which happened to be the same author. So also, y'all, this book, it's heavy. I don't know why. It doesn't look particularly thick. Like if I compare this to Parents' Weekend by Alex Finlay, I guess it is thicker, but it feels heavier. Like this is very light and this feels heavy. So there's a lot of reading I got to do in here. Let's see how many pages this book is. Yeah, 441 pages this book is. So that's pretty chunky. That's pretty chunky for a thriller, but I'm here for it. Y'all know I love my chunky books, and I can't wait to read this.
Also on March 25th is another author that coincidentally was the first author that we did our first vlog to 2 years ago. And that's Ashley Winstead. And this book is This Book Will Bury Me. We did our very first vlog 2 years ago. We're going to have our 2-year anniversary. And that one is for The Last Housewife. We are also planning on doing a vlog for this one, since both of us have gotten the ARC. It's just great timing of when this was coming out and the fact that we did our very first vlog to Ashley Winstead. It's about a college student who becomes obsessed with true crime, and there's a whole world like that, especially, I think they call them armchair detectives, armchair sleuths, who watch real life crimes happening, and some of what's happening is out on TikTok or on YouTube or wherever, and people are trying to figure out these crimes. And I feel that Gabby Petito was a famous one that happened a couple years back, where she had gone missing and everyone was trying to figure out what happened to her. And in that case, a lot of it ended up being helpful because people who were camping near where Gabby and Brian ended up getting footage that helped them locate where her body was. So in this one, the college student's name is Jane. She becomes obsessed because something had happened with her father, but there's a case that happens in Idaho, and I don't know if it's referring to the Idaho case that still hasn't gone to trial, where there were 4 college students that were murdered, and there's someone that is arrested and going to be on trial for it. And I obviously I don't get as obsessed or try to solve them. And I feel like part of me has wanted to work in like the police field. If you watch our channel, I often talk about watching 2020 and all the true crime type things, but I don't fall so down the rabbit hole that I'm trying to figure things out. Obviously, I do get theories based on what evidence that I see or what I'm reading. But there are people that actually, and this is what happens in this book, that they will actually go and try and solve it themselves, like physically go and look for evidence and talk to people. And I think at times that could also interfere with police investigations because they're not professional and they could jeopardize cases. I think this is going to be a very interesting one, especially with my interest in this field. So keep an eye out. We do plan on doing a vlog for this one. The next one is another physical arc. This one is called Lucky Night. It's by Eliza Kennedy, also coming out on March 25th. It's about a couple who has been cheating on their significant others. I think both of them are married for a while. They end up in a hotel, but the hotel ends up being on fire. This is fiction, and they end up coming to terms with what they have done with their lives and everything that I guess kind of made it go off the rails and they're not exactly where they want to be when something like this drastic has happened. I feel like it's an interesting concept as everything is burning around them and it doesn't sound like they can get out, literally getting caught cheating and doing something horrendous. And that's the way that they end up seemingly dying, but who knows, maybe they'll get out. I don't know what'll happen, but it is a very interesting concept and I plan on reading this one. Maybe doing an arc for this arc review, but we'll see. Another interesting fiction book that's coming out that I really want to read, also on March 25th. It's called Tilt by Emma Patty. Set over the course of one day, a heart-racing debut about a woman facing the unimaginable. And she's determined to find safety. She is 9 months pregnant. She's shopping for a crib at an IKEA, and a massive earthquake happens in Portland, Oregon. So she has no way to reach her husband because there's no phone service. She has no money on her, and the city is in chaos. There's nothing to do but walk. So that one just sounded a little interesting to see what would happen. And it reminds me of those like TV movies or just movies where there's an earthquake and what happens with humanity. And I think one of the things it mentioned in there is there's a place being looted because people are trying to get food and have no way of getting food. Sounds like an interesting concept, and I plan on reading that one too. The next one is also a physical arc. It's called The Last Session by Julia Bartz. I was really happy that I got a copy of this. I had wanted this one as well. It comes out April 1st. It's considered a thriller, but I think it's a literary thriller technically. So this one is about a woman who ends up talking to a patient, and the patient gets away from her and she becomes obsessed with finding her because of something the patient said and some connection she had to her past. She ends up following her to this retreat in Arizona, and it's seemingly that retreat is hiding something. I feel like it was very general the way they were describing this. I have a feeling there's a lot more detail in actually reading this, but it was enough to grab my interest, and I'm very interested in seeing what this one's about.
On April 8th, I have The Maid Secret by Nita Prose, and this is the third book in Molly the Maid series. And y'all, this isn't a typical book. This isn't a book you would typically see me really liking, kind of like the Finlay Donovan. I don't read cozy mysteries generally. And this is I would consider this a mystery / cozy mystery. It's on the cozier side. It's not very thriller or violent or bloody type of mystery, but I just love Molly the Maid. I love her character. She is on the spectrum, and the way that Nita Prose writes this character just amazes me. It literally blows my mind when I read these books, because the character Molly is so innocent. It's almost like a child, but she's not a child. She's an adult. She's very smart. But you're seeing things through her eyes, and the way that this author writes, even though you're seeing it through Molly's eyes, you know as the reader what's actually going on, even though Molly doesn't know what's going on, if that makes sense. You just need to read the book. If you like mysteries or cozy mysteries, or a book, that has a character with someone on the spectrum on it, I think that this is a fantastic mystery series. In this third book, Molly's the head maid of the Grand Regency Hotel, and she's really excited because a Hidden Treasures TV show is coming to do a show, and Molly has some antiques from her grandma, I'm sure, that she wants to praise. And she's also planning her wedding to Juan Manuel, who's her boyfriend. If you read the little Christmas novella that came out last year, that's kind of the story of how they got engaged, and it's really cute. But she is getting married to Juan, and she's really excited about that. So in the process of her bringing these antiques to do the show, they find out that she has an antique that's worth millions of dollars. So Molly ends up becoming rich. So the auction for this antique that Molly owns is coming up, and she is excited to get it sold and get her money. But right before the auction occurs, they discover that the antique has been stolen. So a lot of this book is gonna revolve around the mystery of who stole her antique and why. And the description also hints that it's someone her parents knew, someone about her past, which is also very intriguing because if you've read the series, you know that you don't know a lot about her parents. You know a lot about her gram, which is her grandmom that raised her, but you don't really know anything about her parents. So I'm excited to get this book, learn more about Molly's past, and I want to know who would have stolen sweet little Molly's antique treasure.
Next one comes out April 8th, and it's called What Remains of Teague House by Stacy Johns. I saw this one not necessarily on Edelweiss or NetGalley, but another way that I look for books is on Instagram. I follow all the publishers, and one of the publishers I pay attention to is actually Frida McFadden's publisher because they have a lot of interesting thrillers that they always post about coming out. It's called Poison Pen Press, I believe is the name of the publisher. This one is a gripping multi-point of view that blends literary suspense following the Rollins siblings discovering bodies buried in their backyard. One was put there just last week. So that one just sounded, again, just a very brief description. I don't know exactly all the details to that one. And it also had an interesting cover that grabbed me. I always think of Amanda because when you're going through Instagram, it's usually the covers, because it's all pictures, that's grabbing your attention. So oftentimes I will be like, oh, what's that? And then I'll read a little bit about it. And then I'll go over to Edelweiss or NetGalley because on Edelweiss I have a shelf where I list everything that has gotten my interest that I'm thinking of reading, just so I can keep an eye on it. And sometimes I also ask for the electronic arc just so that I can read it. But me and Amanda are so backed up right now and so behind that I feel that we have way too many to read. Like, I feel like I need to be reading 2 books at once in order to get caught up. It's kind of crazy how many books we have that we need to get through.
Next book, April 8th, is Their Monstrous Hearts by Tainted Khan. This book is described as dual timeline, so not a fan of that, but the premise just sounds so cool. There's a writer who is struggling to write a book, and he gets notified that his grandmom has passed away. So he decides that he's going to go to her estate. It's in Milan, Italy, and he is going to try to finish his book there. Maybe learning about his grandmom a little bit, maybe a change of scenery would do him some good, get his creative head going so he can finish this book. But when he gets there, there's a lot of weird things about the house. It mentions something weird about butterflies, something odd is going on in the greenhouse at this estate, and the neighbors are kind of weird and creeping him out a little bit. And then finally he stumbles upon her diary, and but in the course of reading the diary, he hopes to uncover some mysteries that are surrounding her death and maybe finish the book that he is in the middle of writing. So I find all of that very interesting. I'm curious to see what the dual timeline is going to be. If the dual timeline is him in one timeline and then his grandmom's diary is the other timeline where you're getting her diary entries about her life, I think that that's interesting. I could handle that. That kind of reminds me of The Only One Left by Riley Sager, where you're getting the letters in that book, except in this book you would be getting diary entries. So this book's appealing to me. Even though it's dual timeline, I want to try it out.
The next one made me laugh a little bit because it's considered, I think, women's fiction. I hate that there's a category called women's fiction. So it's not exactly romance, but it's a category of fiction that's, I guess, lighter and concerned with women's interest. I don't know if that's exactly how they say it, but it's by an author that I've seen around for a while, but I have never actually read, and her name's Jennifer Weiner. And this one's called The Griffin Sisters' Greatest Hits, and it comes out April 8th. It's also going to have a sprayed edge copy. It's about sisters Cassie and Zoe. They were catapulted to fame in the early 2000s as a pop singing group, the Griffin Sisters. After a year in the limelight, tragedy broke them up. 2 decades later, Zoe's a housewife and Cassie's off the grid, and the sisters aren't speaking. They have turned into a where are they now footnote in music history. Zoe's teenage daughter, her name's Cherry, is determined to be a star herself and on a quest to find out what happened to her mom and the truth and the tragedy that broke up the Griffin sisters. It sounded really interesting. It was also reminding me almost like a Taylor Jenkins Reid type novel, but it just sounded, I don't know, different than anything that I've read lately, even if it has like some of that hallmark of what I feel like is a Taylor Jenkins Reid. But I definitely want to read this, and I do have an electronic ARC of it, so I want to read it, and I most likely will do an ARC review if I do read it.
Last book for April 8th is Firebird by Juliet Cross, and I've read this book. And my ARC review for this book is coming out in March. So stay tuned for that. That's all I'm going to say about this book. But y'all, look at this cover. I don't know why, but I love this cover. I think this girl just looks so beautiful but fierce at the same time. I don't know. But anyways, this book coming out April 8th. And my ARC review will be coming out in March for this.
The next one on my list made me laugh, and I kept it here. Even though there is a small part of me, I still don't know if I'll be able to read it. And I have not delved into this genre before. It's called cozy mysteries. I don't know if you guys know what cozy mysteries are. I don't even know if I fully understand what cozy mysteries are, but it is, from what I understand, cozy mysteries are about murder, like a Murder, She Wrote, the TV show, that it's about murder and is about things that are violent, but they don't glorify and focus on the violence part of it or have the details of it. It just is kind of a solve it in a nice way. I don't know if I'm saying that in a good way. Anyway, this one is about the Golden Girls. So the Golden Girls are getting their own cozy mystery, and it's called Murder by Cheesecake, and it's written by Rachel Ekstrom, and it comes out, Rachel Ekstrom Courage, and it comes out April 15th. I am a fan of the TV show. I grew up watching the Golden Girls. I find their humor, it just cracks me up still. If I see reruns, I can't help but watch them because I just think they're hilarious. Blanche is probably my favorite, but all of them, I just feel like they're all funny in their own way. I don't know the exact plot line of this. I just know that it takes the characters from the Golden Girls and puts them into a cozy mystery, which should be very interesting. The concept is something that I'm drawn to. I don't know how that will read because I'm used to watching it as a TV show. I think it might be better if it was a TV show, but obviously they can't do that since all of the Golden Girls unfortunately have passed away. But I do think it's an interesting concept, and we shall see if I do read it, and if I do, I will share with you guys.
For April 15th, I have Scorched Skies by E.J. Mello. This book, I'm kind of on the fence about. I wasn't sure if I was going to include it in my most anticipated or not, but then I figured, what the heck. This book you're following, there's two races of people. There are the winged race that live in the sky, and they're kind of the rulers, and then there are the earthbound race that live on the land. And Tanwyn is a young woman who is an offspring of a winged race and an earthbound race, so which is forbidden. Okay, that's not allowed in this world. So she has to live in secrecy because she doesn't want to be found. But then one day her earthbound family is captured and taken up to the skybound realm and imprisoned. So she goes on this journey to get her family back, and along the way she kind of falls in love with the prince of the wingbound race in the sky. So that just seems interesting. I feel like it's a lot of tropes that we've already read. It doesn't sound like it could be very different than a lot of the other books, but it piqued my interest enough that I I kind of interested in this book. The way the description reads, it sounds like it might be YA, but it's not listed as YA. So it's probably not YA, but I'm not sure about this book. I'm on the fence about it, but it can't hurt, you know, maybe I can find it in the Libby app or something and give it a shot. And for all of my romantasy viewers out there, let y'all know what I think.
The next one is literary suspense and fiction. It's called The Death of Us by Abigail Dean. It comes out April 15th. It's a slow burn simmer of psychological suspense and the propulsive drive of crime thrillers. Story of a marriage turned inside out by a violent encounter that sets fire to the hairline faults that were there from the start. Now that's a sentence. I didn't write that. That was on the back of the book. One summer, husband and wife Edward and Isabel are home invaded by a serial killer. Their foundation of their marriage implodes in the wake of the violence. They are reunited years later when the serial killer is caught and a trial begins, and they start to relive everything all over again between them and their history. I did try to read a book by Abigail Dean a few years back, and it seemed something I would completely love. It was just the type of book that felt like I usually read and really like, but it was too slow. And I even knew going into that at the time, I knew it was a slow burn. I think it depends. I'm a mood reader, and it depends on how it's hitting me at that moment. So I may pick this up and get through it and love it. I may pick it up and think, I'm not in the mood for a slow burn. So that was one of the ones that I almost took off because I don't know for sure, but it does seem interesting. So I left it on for now. The next one I'm really excited about because I finally read the first book, and this is a sequel to this book, and it's by Geneva Rose. I have now read a couple by Geneva Rose, and I did enjoy them. I read The Perfect Marriage. It's probably the one she's known for the most. And this one comes out April 15th, and it's called The Perfect Divorce. And it is going to also have the sprayed edges special edition for this book. It's a hardcover. It's hard to talk about, and I think of the quote by Miss Frida McFadden, that she's not a big fan of having sequels because she said sequels in and of themselves are spoilers because, you know, at least someone has survived to the next book. And obviously I don't want to give away what happened in The Perfect Marriage, because if you haven't read that and want to read it, obviously you don't want to know the ending per se. So a continuation is going to happen in The Perfect Divorce. I do plan on doing an ARC review for this one and talk about both of them. So stay tuned for that one, and I'll give you guys all my thoughts on both of them.
On April 22nd, I have The Tainted Khan by Taran Matharu. And Taran Matharu does have his own YouTube channel. I will link it in the description below if you want to go check his channel out. This is the second book of the Soulbound saga. And the first book is Dragon Rider. And that is one of the books, I got an ARC for it, and it was one of those books that just pleasantly surprised me. I had so much fun reading that book. I did do an ARC review for it, so I will also link that in the description if you want to learn more about that book. But basically, you're following a young man who was a prisoner in a castle, and there's a coup that happens inside the castle, and he ends up escaping and finding a dragon egg, and he becomes soulbound to a dragon once the egg hatches. So everything's looking good for him, but it's not, because he is being chased by the ruling class that overthrew the castle. They don't want him free. They don't want him on the loose, and especially if he has a dragon. And where the book leaves off, his dragon is not a very big, powerful dragon. It's still kind of a baby. So I am looking forward to continuing this journey with him and finding more out about his dragon and what it really means to be soulbound. In this world, the soulbound doesn't have to go only to dragons. There are many different people that are soulbound to different types of animals. So it's just a very fun world to be in, and I really am anxious to get into the second book of the Soulbound saga.
And here's a romance. It's my yearly Emily Henry romance that I read. I have read several of hers by now, and I do enjoy her immensely. This one's called Great Big Beautiful Life. It comes out April 22nd, and it's actually one I don't have I don't have a physical ARC and I don't have an electronic ARC for this one. Alice Scott is the character, the main female character, and she's an eternal optimist, still dreaming of her big writing break. Hayden Anderson, the male lead in this book, is a Pulitzer Prize winning human thundercloud. So I guess it's Grumpy Sunshine is the trope here. They're both set out to write a biography of a woman no one has seen in years, a tragic heiress and former tabloid princess and daughter of one of the most storied families of the 20th century, and her name is Margaret Ives. Margaret invites them both for a 1-month trial period, after which she'll choose who gets to write her story. Sounded like an interesting concept. I feel like no matter what, I'm going to read the Emily Henry book that comes out. I enjoy them, and I'll be reading them with everybody because I don't plan on getting an electronic or any kind of ARC. So I look forward to reading that one in April.
Continuing on, the next book is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I have not read this author. I have heard a lot about him. He is a horror author. And if you ever watch Jordaline, she talks about him a lot. She really likes his books. So when I saw he was coming out with this book, I read the description and it sounds fun. You're following an actress who stumbles across this 5-year-old runaway boy, and she decides to try to help him, but following this boy is his crazy murderous father, and it says they have a bloody encounter with the boy's father, and her and the boy end up running for their lives. Now, while they're both trying to run from his father, she discovers that this boy can make his nightmares come true. And then the description just says, when the wolf comes home, no one will be spared. So you're kind of led to believe that he has nightmares of this wolf, and the wolf comes to life and wreaks havoc on everybody. So this sounded pretty cool. Again, I haven't read this author. I've heard a lot about him. He's highly praised by Jordaline, so I thought this would be a fun book to add to my TBR and my most anticipated list.
The next one is horror, and it sounded so interesting in terms of a concept, and it's called Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig. I have not read anything by Chuck Wendig, and I can't even think of anything he's written off the top of my head, but I know he has books that are popular. But this one comes out April 29th. It's a group of friends investigating a mystery of a strange staircase in the woods in this mesmerizing horror novel. One friend walks up and never comes back down, and the staircase disappears. It reappears 20 years later. I don't know, that one sounded interesting, so I am looking forward to checking that one out.
My final book for my March and April most anticipated is The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig. Now, he is the author of the Book of Accidents, and I actually have a copy of that book up here on my shelf. I've not read it yet. It is in my TBR pile, which my husband gives me some grief for because I have so many. But this book sounded it was giving me It vibes, okay? Stephen King's It. It's giving me those vibes. You're following a group of teenagers, five teenagers that have an oath to protect each other, and they end up going on this camping trip, and they find a staircase in the middle of the woods. And they're not sure what to do. One of the kids decides that they're going to go all the way to the top and see where the staircase goes. So he climbs the stair. I don't know if it's a he. I assume it's a he. He climbs the staircase, and then when he gets to the top, the staircase disappears. And obviously the kid is missing as well. And then 20 years later, the staircase reappears. So, I mean, it's kind of, like I said, it reminds me of It, where, kids go into the sewer and they never come out. And then every so many years, it will reappear and start kidnapping kids again. The staircase is kind of reminding me of that, where, the staircase appears, a kid goes up it, he never comes back, and then it reappears 20 years later. So this just sounded like a cool concept for a horror book, and I want to put it on here. Maybe I'll try to read the Book of Accidents before this comes out and see, how the writing style is. But if not, I think this is going to be a great book to add to your TBR.
Next one is also horror, and it's called, and I'm not sure if I know how to pronounce it, but I'm gonna put it on the screen. I just didn't want to murder whatever word that is pronounced. And it's by Colin Armstrong, April 29th, a chilling novel based on a terrifying urban legend about a video game created by the government for psychological warfare. And it sounded like this video game shows up and everyone starts playing it, and then right after they start playing it, there's some kind of plague that happens. And I want to say it either takes place in the 80s or 90s, but that one sounded definitely different than anything that I've read. So I plan on checking that one out. And last on my list, April 29th, this one's called Again, Only More Like You by Catalina Margulies. And it's about two best friends, dumped, pregnant, fired, best friends Carmen and Allie. They approach their 40th birthday and is anything but a celebration. That just sounds horrible. Yet it might be exactly what they need to set their lives on the right path. So that one is fiction and also on my list. It feels like I went a little faster than I normally go through these because I feel like I'm usually sitting here forever, but I feel like I actually got through everything pretty good. Unfortunately, we don't have any Frida McFadden in those 2 months. She has a new one coming out that we already read, and that is in May, called The Tenant. I also have not heard of any Sophie Cousins coming out. But as I said earlier, I don't need to add anything right now because we literally have so many books that we are backed up on and trying to figure out when we're reading everything. Don't need more. Though I would take a Sophie Cousins book right now. I'm going to go back to healing from my surgery because I feel like I am fighting not just the effects of the medication, but also being in this position for too long. I am feeling the pain that I need to lay down. Thank you guys for watching all the books that we're looking forward to in March and April. Are any of these on your list? What did we leave out that you're absolutely looking forward to? And please let us know in the comments any thoughts that you have. We have a lot of vlogs coming out. Definitely keep your eyes peeled for everything that we have coming out. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time.